Hello, everyone. Thank you for choosing to be here today. Let's applaud you, all of you from 55 plus community colleges and universities across the country for showing up. Remember, this event is for you. Be bold, ask questions, take notes, connect on LinkedIn. Paras, please put a quarter in my jar, please. My name is Kamina Singh. I'm the founder of HumanUPtions. Our goal is to create meaningful connections from mentorships, internships, apprenticeships, and jobs, and to allow you to explore familiar and unfamiliar career options via storytelling by industry leaders and experts. And we have a lot of those today. Make sure you stick around. There's going to be a lot of discussions around internships, mentorships, finding jobs, being prepared. So you need to be there to the extreme end. Much gratitude to Jane Swift for her trust in me and HumanUPtions and Elena from Shift, and for Education at Work for their sponsorship. Thank you, Melanie, Stephanie, Jamie, and Ishmael for all you do and did to make today a reality. We're privileged to have real experts with us today. Jesse, Paras, and Ford are joining us to share their time and wisdom. I'm extremely grateful for Elena's partnership. She's an author, podcaster, human capital expert, and she truly cares about your success. She's here to help you unlock your future. Our keynote speaker is Jane Swift. Jane is a legend. She was the first female governor of Massachusetts, and now she's the president of Education at Work. Jane changed gears from politics to education to help you build successful careers. Remember, this event is all about you and for you. I can tell you that Jane doesn't play. We connected via LinkedIn on a Sunday afternoon, spoke via phone on Monday morning, met in person a few days later at Blackstone's headquarters in New York City. And here we are a few months later. Welcome, Jane.
Thank you so much, Kamina. And I am thrilled to be doing this event, just like I'm thrilled to be doing this work. So I today am going to show you that a 60-year-old woman who's formerly in politics can actually figure out how to use technology. So there's my first big win. I want to tell you a little bit about Education at Work. And then I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself, tell you why we're doing this webinar, and a little foreshadowing, because if you're in school, probably you know foreshadowing. Give you the same advice I would give to my daughters. I have 3 early career professionals who I spend a lot of time trying to help them find their pathway. And then I'm as excited as you are to hear from the professionals who are going to serve their wisdom, do things, answer questions in the chat, and take your questions. So with that, let me introduce Education at Work. Education at Work, today, we are the employer of about 600 students. Those students work for Fortune 500 and mid-sized companies around the country. We have a large number of students who work for Discover Financial Services, some who work for First Financial and Fidelity, and a large and growing presence with Intuit. Students who, if any of you are using TurboTax in the next couple of weeks to file your taxes and you have a question, you very well may be talking to a student who is doing that work on behalf of us and Intuit. What we do with college students is that we provide a flexible schedule so that you can successfully combine work and school. One of my 3 daughters worked in college athletics, and it was made very obvious to me that colleges and universities will moderate the conflicts between athletics and academics for their athletes. But there's really no person on campus or no office to help students who must work in order to finance their education, to moderate those conflicts and challenges. And that's effectively what we do. We give you a flexible schedule to work around 20 hours a week. We pay a competitive wage, and we provide tuition assistance that is an additional amount of money that allows you to pay directly to your institution tuition costs. Today, we have locations in Salt Lake City. As you can tell, because I'm sleeveless, I am in Tempe, Arizona, where the weather is gorgeous. I am not putting that palm tree in the back just to irritate all my friends from the Northeast, where it has been bitterly cold for the last 2 months, although it's starting to warm up. We also have offices in El Paso. It might be warmer in El Paso today than Tempe, and we're operating many new sites. With that, I less want to talk about me and talk about why I do this work. I was on a Pell Grant when I was in college. I graduated in 1987. You already guessed that I'm old. In fact, I celebrated my 60th birthday just this week. I went through college at a time when getting a college degree created opportunities for work that gave us upward social and economic mobility. That has been the story of my life. And as my daughters were going through college, I became aware that the college to career pipeline was desperately broken. For students today in a very dynamic, economy, it is not enough often to just get your college degree, and that does not always guarantee a good job. Many employers are looking for 2 years of experience, very specific skills and things that you've mastered. And that's what we're trying to do, but also something I think every student can do who's working. And I'll talk a little bit about that. If you want to understand more about my career path that Kamina didn't say, please go connect with me on LinkedIn. I am Governor Jane Swift, which is a little bit obnoxious, but I put up with a lot when I was governor, so I should be able to use that title in my LinkedIn to differentiate me from all the other Jane Swifts. If you can imagine, there are probably a lot of Jane Swifts in the world. I worked in retail my first job out of college. I often tell folks at the year that I graduated, the college that I went to, a small private liberal arts college, I believe tuition was around $12,500 a year. By the way, our family contribution was about $1,200 a year, but my first job paid me in the mid-20s. Think about that relative today, when the costs are so much higher, but many times the starting salaries of some of the jobs you'll secure aren't always justifying the investment you've made. What I have helped my daughters to figure out is, how do you make the investment in a college education, which still today is the single best pathway to change your economic and social reality, but what are the other things you need to do in order to secure that good first job? We're going to go over a lot of things today, and I'm excited, as I said, to hear from our accomplished speakers. We'll go over resume and cover letters, networking, win themes, personal branding. But one of the things that I think is the most important for any student is that you build a narrative. I used to teach in college, and I used to talk about how political leaders have to develop a narrative, but every single one of you needs to develop your own narrative. I put up pictures to help define my narrative. You need to define your brand. So as Kamina said, I was a governor. There is a picture there of me from the State House of Massachusetts in the governor's office. What I love are the two little girls who are in front of it, because at the time I was getting into politics, there were very few, and still are too few, women, but also not very many young women. And sometimes how we show up really can create motivation for other people to take on roles. But I also have been known throughout my career as a working mom. And I don't know if any of my daughters joined this program today, but I used a good picture of them. But one of the things that I tell them all the time is, you need to be authentic, but let's be polished authentic. You need to define your narrative. I am a working mother who believes deeply in the value of public service and to creating opportunity for others to follow behind me. So please make sure as you're building your narrative, you define yourself so other people don't define you. And frankly, I'm showing pictures because how we show up and how we present ourselves visually in this day and age is incredibly important. You also need to be able to clearly and succinctly articulate your value proposition. I call them win themes. I'm probably a pain in the neck to my daughters. I would say to them, don't go to any event where you may meet people who will be important to your career later without going into that event with win themes. My win theme for today was to make sure you all knew that there was an organization like Education at Work who is hiring college students around the country, some in our physical hubs and some remotely. So if you want to find out later how to get a paid internship with Intuit or Discover, Fidelity, or First Financial Bank, my hope is you will follow up with us. And so we will put you in the queue because we have doubled the size of our organization and we are going to double it again next year. So we need many more college students to come and work with us so that we can help you develop the skills and present the experience on your resume necessary for getting that good first job. The tactical insights, one of the things that why I always tell folks to know your win themes and own your narrative. When I was in politics, I would often meet people who were running for office for the first time. And I would say to them, why are you running? And they couldn't answer the question. There's an analogy directly to when you go to interview. People may ask you, why do you want to work for Intuit? Why do you want this particular job? If you can't answer that opening question, or you don't find a way toward, if even you're not asked, you want to make your presentation of whatever question you're being asked about why it is you want to secure the opportunity that you're there for. The second thing I would say is AI is going to change the number of opportunities that are available to all of us in terms of work, but it also can be a great benefit. If you are doing interviews, if you are applying to jobs and you are not using AI, you are making things 10 times harder for yourself. AI can write your cover letter, which you should always then review. AI can help you to develop your win themes. AI can find opportunities for you. ChatGPT, Gemini on Google, they are free resources that I hope all of you are using. I already talked to you about win themes, which I pound over and over, but have a win theme. And if anybody wants to in the chat right now, enter what your win theme is. Why did you come here today? What was it you were hoping? Please give me your win themes or your questions in the chat. We'll be answering questions all along. Lastly, handwritten thank you notes. Even in an era of AI, if you can do a handwritten thank you note, whenever you have an interview for a job, or if you're just doing a networking event and somebody asks you. The truth is, many of the people who make hiring decisions are my age, not my children's ages. And a handwritten thank you note makes a huge difference when you're competing with a lot of people. Sounds simple, super, super important. If you're in an interview and you only have email addresses, it's entirely appropriate at the end to say, is there an address where I can send a thank you note afterwards? Or you could follow up with whoever arranged the interview if they were not the interviewer, an administrative person saying, I'd like to send a thank you note. Where should I send it to? Obviously, you're not asking people for their home address, but you are asking for a place you can send a handwritten thank you note. I met with a small regional bank and a woman said to me, anyone who doesn't send her a follow-up thank you note does not get to the next level of the hiring process. Super, super important. The last thing I want to talk about is dress. You should always present yourself in a professional manner. And what I always give folks for an example or as a hint is if it's business casual, show up in a suit when you first show up. People intuitively and maybe even subconsciously will notice the effort you're making, and they will take that as a signal of how interested you are, but also of how professional you are. Should people care what we wear and how we present ourselves visually? We can have a long debate on that. I'm trying to help you to execute on your goal, which is to get a good first job. what you wear, even if you're on Zoom, matters tremendously. These are the things and the advice that I give to my own daughters, but I don't want to hear from me this whole time. I'm excited about the program that has been set up. So at this point, we are going to move into the program and here, and I believe either Elena or Kamina are going to moderate, but please be putting your questions into chat. I will be here the entire time. I may turn my camera off at some point to eat a little bit of lunch in between meetings. Don't ever eat on Zoom. Let's go. And if any of you are from New England, I could have said LFG, which used to be the Patriots mantra, but of course I wouldn't say that word just in case somehow my mother figured out how to sign on to this Zoom.
Amazing. Thank you, Jane. Thank you for Kamina. Thanks to Education at Work and HumanUPtions for putting this amazing event together. My name is Elena Gargimova. I'm your moderator for the day. I am so excited for this. I'm so excited because we have an amazing panel lineup, and I'm about to introduce them in just a moment. But before we get started, to make sure that we make the most out of this event, what I want to tell you is a couple of housekeeping things. So first of all, I see many of you already dropping questions. Beautiful. So you're in the right place. This is already going to be a fire panel because you're already dropping so many questions. So this is amazing. Please note that I will look at those questions. We will address them throughout the presentations, throughout the panel discussion, and also towards the end during the Q&A session. So please keep dropping them. We'll be going through them and so on. Another thing I want you to pay attention to is that right now you all have your cameras off and you're muted. This is really to make sure that we don't overwhelm Zoom and make sure that we are really having our speakers highlighted and so that you hear from them so it doesn't become distractive. So that is why we have that set up that way. Of course, when you do ask a question, what would really help us, if you don't mind, before you ask a question, whether it is in the chat or when we invite you to come unmute, to unmute you, please state your name. You can just do your first name and then the school that you're joining us from. Okay, that would be super helpful. All right, so it's time to introduce our speakers, our panelists. So first, I would love to welcome Jessie Van Arman. She's the head of global operations and marketing at Meta. She's a strategic market leader with over 15 years of experience of learning and development. She's also worked previously at marketing roles in companies like Spotify and Yahoo. We also have Paras Doshi. He's the global client director at LinkedIn. With over a decade of Bloomberg before that, and comes with a wealth of experience at big companies and how to grow your career in a competitive space. And then we also have Ford Coleman. So Ford is the founder and CEO of Runway. So he developed a platform that connects companies with vetted university talent for internships, full-time internships, as well as first jobs out of school. So I don't know about you guys, but I'm super excited. So I want you to pause whatever you're doing. I want you to mute your phones. I want you to put it on Do Not Disturb because we're getting ready to dive into this. So, all right, awesome. Let's just get into it. So one of the biggest topics that people want to know about is how do I get hired? How do I grow my career? So we'll start with the easy stuff. So Jessie, Paras, I'm going to come to you for this one. So you both worked at top global companies. When you were starting back in your careers, in the earlier days, what were some of the skills that you would give credit to that you're like, I really think me having this skill or this characteristic really helped me get that first opportunity and really thrive in it. So Jessie, over to you first.
Sure. So hi, everyone. Nice to meet you. I'm Jessie, as has been stated. I think there's a couple things, right? There's soft skills, which are uber important. And then there's actually like industry or field skills. And, through every job I've ever gotten, the very first in I have had has been my network. I think we all kind of understand, like I call it the black box of the internet when you're applying for jobs, especially today. It's really, really difficult to be seen and to stand out. And the soft skill that I think helped me build my network has been high energy, congeniality, a willingness to approach people and sustain relationships. And then like once in the job, I think one of the things that has helped me to stand out is just kind of a willingness to kick butt at whatever I'm given, especially earlier in my career when maybe some of the things I was given like weren't that sexy. So I'll pause there and let Paras kind of weigh in as well.
Jesse, +1 to what you just said, right? I think we underestimate our capabilities to do big things and great things in the long term, right? The first thing I ever did in my first job was replacing keyboards working at Bloomberg, right? And I think the most important thing is, yes, focus on your hard skills, but at the same time, what was considered hard skills and what was considered soft skills are really the hard skills of the day to day, right? So be curious. Absolutely be the most curious human being that can ever be out there. Ask questions and genuinely, and come from an ingenuity of asking the questions that you want to learn, right? Be flexible. You never know when your next opportunity is going to tap you on the shoulder. Always keep an open door and open minds. Every single opportunity I got in my 14 years that I spent at Bloomberg was where I was tapped on the shoulder and somebody said, hey, I think you should do this role. I never applied for an internal position or internal promotion ever in my 14 years at Bloomberg. Every single one of them was given to me when somebody tapped me on my shoulder, purely because of curiosity and flexibility is what I would highly, highly recommend.
I love the point you mentioned about flexibility. It's something I hear from employers in my work all the time. And Jesse, you also mentioned it's like just doing what you need to do, right? I think there's this, sometimes there's expectation, you know, you're excited, you graduated, you want to get that job and you do the big stuff, but it's usually the little stuff that gets you to that next level. It's usually the flexibility and the openness to do those little jobs that might not be in your job description. That's not what you signed up for, but being a team player is probably one of the biggest things as well. So that's kind of what I hear from both of you. So that's beautiful. Ford, a question for you. So one of the other things that, you know, students ask about in recent grads is, you know, application processes. But what often we don't think about is what are the mistakes we're making? Why aren't we getting those next opportunities? What is it that in applications that we do or don't do that doesn't get us that interview?
Yeah, no, great question. And a little bit of background for y'all. But I'm, you know, young guy, a little bit fresh out of school myself, so I can relate to a lot of the things that y'all are experiencing right now, trying to get that first job. And sometimes it's that chicken and egg problem, right? It's like, well, how do I get my first job if I don't have any experience, right? Don't have to show my experience for the job in order to kind of get it. But one sort of mistake I would say is, you know, most students think that it's like their resume is what gets them that internship. But in reality, a lot of the companies that are hiring for interns, right, they're hiring for potential, not just necessarily your past experience. So, you know, your ability to show what you will do and what you're capable of doing matters a lot more than what you've already done, which is great because it kind of like evens the playing field on a lot of applicants. But Jane kind of touched on this a little bit in the beginning. You know, some crucial mistakes that, you know, we have seen and we've helped like hundreds of college students get jobs is in, you know, the application process and the interview process, right? So number one, in the application process, right? If you're just one of those people that's hitting the easy quick apply on LinkedIn, right? And you just quick apply to 100 jobs and you're like, oh, okay, nice. I just applied to 100 jobs today. Like, let's go. I did awesome stuff. Unfortunately, in reality, you know, recruiters will probably instantly X you out if your application isn't really tailored to that job role. So like taking the time to tailor your application to that specific job and to that company, while sure it is a little bit more work, it significantly increases the chances of you getting in an interview. Now, in the interview process, right, a key thing is the following up, right? Every HR team, organization, or hiring manager, they love the follow up. And so sometimes it's like, oh, like, is it weird that I'm kind of like following up to the person, thanking them for their time? Like, does that sound like too pushy or I'm being too out there? But like if you don't send the follow up, the odds are like that can negatively impact your application. So tailor your application to every job and be super personable to the people interviewing you.
Beautiful. I love also the point of follow-up because I think that is a magic formula that a lot of candidates miss. And a mentor once told me is that what's the worst that will happen? You follow up, they don't respond, right? Like what's the worst that will happen? Because it seems like a lot of people have this fear around following up. They're saying, well, maybe I'm bothering this person. I don't want to seem desperate. No, you're just doing your part of the process. So beautifully described, Ford. I want to kind of throw this question out to all of you. So One of the big things when we talk about hiring is the scary word that everybody keeps saying, networking, networking, networking. And I know some people are just like cringe the minute they hear that word, right? And so there's a lot of talk about that. So question to you is, when we're thinking about networking, how much is it really about being good at networking versus being a person that other people want to network with? And also, maybe if you can also look at it from an introvert perspective. So it seems like an extroverted kind of skill, but does it have to be? And if you are an introvert, what does that look like? So I'll start with Paras. Let's go with you first.
Yeah. I know networking gets a very bad rep, right? People do a lot of networking for the sake of doing it and be like, oh, I'm going to this networking event and blah, 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 right? Forget the word networking, I would say, right? Upend it on its head, right? Build genuine human connections. Be curious about human beings. Be curious about anybody that you're meeting, right? What can you do for them is the first question that needs to be asked, right? What do you want to learn about this individual? If you make it as a transactional interaction that, oh, I want to network with this person because this person can get me a job here or blah, 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 it is going to fall on its face and you're going to fail terribly at networking, right? You want to make sure that you're building a genuine human connection and getting to know that individual as a human being. We all have that desire that we want to connect with other human beings, right? At the end of the day. So I would recommend that, build genuine connections and relationships, and they matter. Absolutely, they matter. And I think some of the most the deepest friends that I have made in the industry and in my workplace, right, are from a place where we have been genuinely curious about each other's work, each other's lives, each other's likes and dislikes, and how did we get to where we got to, and the stories behind that, right? I think that's extremely important from the perspective that you come in, right? I understand that you're a fresh college graduate, you're still in school, you have nothing to offer, or you have something to offer, and you're more of a taker than a giver at that point in time in the balance of a networking relationship. Don't worry about all those nuances, right? There is something that you can offer. Can I do something for you? What can I do for you? Is the first thing you want to think about, right? How can I solve this problem for you? I see you are interested in this, right? I'm curious about this as well. How does this happen? So have those kinds of meaningful conversations. That always, always, always is the most genuine way of building relationships and networks, I would say.
Yeah, totally. Just doubling down on that, Paras. I mean, networking is, although sometimes just the term itself sounds like transactional, like, hey, I help you, you help me, or, I'll go to a networking event to get a job, like, please give me a job. But in reality, like to be, um, like I guess good at networking. It's about giving value to the people that you're meeting and trying to help them. And in turn, right, the more people that you're giving value to, the more people that you're helping, it will come back around favorably for you. So it is hard, right? If you're a college student entry level and you don't have much skills to be like, well, I can help you in this stuff, I can help you in this, right? But always try to be like a connector, right? Maybe you know someone, maybe you have a family friend that maybe can help them with a problem that they're experiencing, right? So maybe try and think of being almost like a connector too, to help people out, and that goes a long way.
I don't want to be repetitive because the guys here have basically taken the words out of my mouth. I too, like, I don't enjoy networking. Like, I think similarly to Paras, like I position it a bit differently, but I'm building a network and there's a distinction there. I guess the one thing I'll build upon is, in addition to being able to add value, which is uber critical, is also just like building relationships. Because especially if you're fresh out of college or in college, you might not feel like you have anything or any connections to make for people, but just then building a genuine relationship, as well as helping when you do have a way to help. That means that when you need something later on, they're more willing to give, and they also remember your name because you've been there in the times when you don't need something, and you likely also feel more comfortable asking. It can feel a little strange to ask a total or near stranger for something. I also want to go back in time for just a second because Ford mentioned something earlier on a totally different topic I really want to hammer home. It was about resumes and tailoring. For the one thing you didn't mention that I think is critical to know is it's not just recruiters who won't like regard your resume. your resume won't be seen by a recruiter if you don't have the right keywords in it anymore. And I'm not in HR, I'm not a recruiter, so you can Google this instead of like listening to me. But if you just Google like ATS resume tips, it's very, very important that you are following those now to have your resume read by like a technology system, not a person.
Yeah. Beautiful, yeah. And for those who say ATS, applicant tracking system, somebody asked me yesterday, I was like, that's cool, because in recruitment we know what it is, but I realize a lot of people maybe don't. So applicant tracking systems, be aware of those. I do a lot of recruitment, and Jesse is definitely spot on. So in order for you to even get to a human eye, really have to tailor that resume. I love the piece about networking that you guys have shared. I'll drop in the chat. There are two books that I think are very interesting on this topic, and this is where I've learned about networking. One is by Adam Grant, that's called Give and Take. Beautiful read. And the other one is Never Eat Alone by Keith Farazi, I believe. I'm misspelling. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing his name. I apologize. I will drop both of those books. I highly recommend you look into those. It gives you a lot of things you need to know about networking. Paras, I want to come back to you just real quick on this point, because somebody in the chat asked, is like, wonderful, we know we need to build a network, and like, how do I do it? LinkedIn personally has been my network. It's always, I mean, again, I'm not here to promote LinkedIn, but also I am, because it's been completely transformational for me in my career and networks and the amount of people that I meet through there. So can you talk to us a little bit about LinkedIn, and how can people utilize LinkedIn, and how important is LinkedIn in today's career growth?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Again, I work at LinkedIn, so I will evangelize a little bit on LinkedIn as well. But going back when I was not at LinkedIn, right? First things first, be kind to yourself. When I started off on LinkedIn, I had added maybe 15, 20 contacts who were my colleagues or classmates and schoolmates and so on and so forth. I had about 30, 35 people to begin with out the door, and here I am today with about 32 to 3,300 contacts that are on my LinkedIn connections, right? Your network on LinkedIn will grow over a period of time. Let it grow naturally. Don't force the growth of your network on LinkedIn by, oh, let me just sit here and just send 1,000 connection requests to random people. Nope, you don't want that. You want meaningful connections on your LinkedIn profile. It's extremely important for you to have some connection with it. So the way I do my LinkedIn network, obviously, is anybody who I have had any kind of a transaction with, anybody with whom I have broken bread with, gets onto my LinkedIn profile, right? If I have exchanged something meaningful with that human being, gets onto my LinkedIn profile. I get requests to get added, and there's random requests to add. I do not accept those requests, because I was like, all right, I have this person who's added me. I have no idea who they are. Why should I add them, right? I want my LinkedIn feed to be rich. And for that, I want to make sure that I'm interacting with the people with whom I have had some kind of a transaction, right? Now, why is this network important? We define this thing called a network gap. And this is extremely important, that is valuable for today's conversation, right? We've calculated at LinkedIn, backed with data, people who grow up in a certain type of a neighborhood, go to a certain type of a school, and get a certain type of a first job are 12x more likely to succeed in their career. You miss any one of those elements, your ability to succeed comes down significantly. Now, what you have that is in your control is, how do you close this network gap? All right, if I was born in a certain neighborhood that is not a privileged neighborhood or what have you, right? Does that exclude me from the mainstream economy? Does that exclude me from success? No, you have the ability to change that by closing that network gap, by doing networking and relationship building. If I did not go to a good school, does that exclude me from being successful? No, it does not. That's where you use LinkedIn to build those meaningful relationships and close that network gap. Even today, if you go to most of the large organizations or mid-sized organizations, or whichever organization that you go to, the number one source for recruitment in those organizations is referrals. LinkedIn is number two, right? So you have to understand and imagine that your relationship and network that you build on the platform here and off the platform is what is going to help you succeed in the greater run, right? So that's something that you want to be very mindful of as well. I'll drop in a couple of additional resources. I saw some questions like, hey, how do I build a strong profile on LinkedIn and whatnot? I'll throw in some rock your profile content in the chat that y'all can use. And that'll be a great way for you to kind of, spruce it up a little bit and make it look nice and appealing. So.
Beautiful. Thank you for that, Paras. And another part of like building that strong network, some of that network can be also through mentorship and mentors. And that's a big question as well. It's like, how do I find a mentor? How do I find somebody? I mean, that's the biggest question that people ask me. And then another question I want to kind of add to it also is, how do you become a great mentee so that people actually want to have that relationship and mentor you? So Ford, I'll come to you first with that question. Because you've graduated just recently as well. You've started this business, right? You're growing that business, and I'm sure you have tapped into mentorship throughout. So how did you do it?
Yeah, the mentorship can be tricky because you're reaching out to people who have probably a lot of expertise or experience in the space, so they're naturally like probably very, very busy people. So kind of a harsh reality, I think, about trying to get a mentor is it is a bit of a numbers game. So right, just because if you reach out to 10 people and you want them to mentor you, then you might get no one to respond to you. If you reach out to 50 people and you want them to mentor you, you might get one person that responds to you, right? So you do have to somewhat hustle a little bit, in my opinion, to try and get a mentor, but it's crucial to do that also with intention, right? You want to try and find a mentor that has had a career path that you want to go down. Because too, that mentor will see that and is more likely to engage with you and spend time with you, right? If you want to go into I don't know, like biomed or something, but then you're reaching out to a banker to try to have them mentor you, they probably are not likely to, give the time. So I will say a couple things on that front. Then as like a mentee, how do you be the best mentee that you possibly can be? When you have a mentor, it's key, like before you have meetings with them, right? Like I have plenty of mentors. I meet with them once a month. Now, before every conversation I have with them, I have a list of just like the things that I'm personally struggling with. What you don't want is to just have like you want the conversation to actually go somewhere and and you get value from it. You don't want it to just be like, hey, we're just chit chatting about the baseball game last week, right? So I would say a good mentee, constantly come with questions, and you have to be the one that spurs the conversation rather than relying on the mentor to like gear the conversation. Like they're here to help you, but you need to tell them what you need help with.
Absolutely. Something also I've heard is that mentorship doesn't have to be this long-term relationship. It doesn't have to be this month and year long. You could have a mentorship moment. Actually, you're having a lot of mentorship moments right now in this conversation through the gems that these speakers are giving you. So you're actually getting mentored right now, and you will be for the next, 35, 40 minutes that we have left. So this is also a form of mentorship. So be open that mentorship, it doesn't have to be that relationship. Sometimes all you're going to get is that 5 minutes, and you get that mentorship moment that's going to change your life. So that is beautiful. Thank you for that, Ford. Jesse, I want to come to you and talk a little bit about internships. So one of the things that at least kind of I hear from students and recent grads is like, listen, Elena, I've already done one internship. I do not want to do another one. I need a job. Or, I've done two. And my question is, well, did you get a job? No. So I'm going to wait for that perfect job. Is it better to just wait for that perfect full-time salary job? Or should they do an internship while, another internship and continue to get experience while they look for that job? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think the first thing I'll say is that this is probably like a deeply personal question because everybody's in a different financial scenario, and some people can afford to take unpaid or low paid internships and others can't. And so I want to acknowledge that. That said, if all things are gravy and equal and like either one would be financially viable for you, I think it's a matter in those early years and later years, quite frankly, as well, of thinking about the things that you can learn in each one, each opportunity that you're choosing between, and the people you're going to meet. Because like as we've established, the network continues to be really critical throughout your career in getting the next job. So if the internship is perhaps at a company name that's notable, because that also can count for things too. And as you get into your career, it's also worth noting that starts to become a lot more important than where you went to college, is the companies that you've worked at. So if the company name carries weight, if the people who might be your managers or that you might have exposure to for both the relationship, but as well as the learning opportunities, that's important. And then perhaps one is going to offer a different set of skills that you might be able to learn. So I'm not really answering your question. What I'm saying is it's really, really dependent on your personal situation and the scenarios that like each opportunity presents to be able to make a decision. But intern versus like a paid, from a resume standpoint, I don't think really matters. It's those other factors.
And I love that you pointed that out, because what I like to say is there's no magic formulas in career search, in job search, and any of that stuff. If anybody tells you, here's 5 ways to get hired, it's a clickbait. Don't fall for it, okay? They might have some solid advice, but it's not everything. Every individual situation is unique. And thank you for Jesse for pointing that out. Beautiful. Let's move on to crushing that interview. So that is another big one, because maybe people get that opportunity, but then something goes wrong and they're not able to close on that opportunity. So I'll start with Paras. Paras, in your work within Bloomberg or LinkedIn, what has been some of the best interviews? Like, we know a lot of the stuff that we shouldn't do, hopefully, right? But what are the things that make a candidate stand out?
Always be curious, right? I think some of the most memorable interviews that I have conducted in my time have been where, you know, the candidate came to the interview prepared, knowing everything about the role, the organization, and there was a clear understanding of what needed to be done, the fact that he had spoken to multiple people, and then that interview was no longer an interview, the interview became a conversation, right? And those are the best kinds. When you can walk away from that interview, that it does not feel like an interview and feels like a conversation, you know you've done a great job at that interview, right? So I think those are probably some of the most memorable ones because they were prepared. So preparation, right? I had a former mentor tell me the rule of the 6 7 Ps. Proper prior preparation prevents piss poor performance, right? So the 7 Ps. And I think that has always worked really well for me. And remember, don't mistake, preparation and planning. They sound similar, but they're not. They're different. Planning and preparation are completely different. So I think preparing yourself for the interviews in depth is going to be the number one requirement that you do. And being comfortable and to ask all the questions, right? It's a two-way street. Gone are the days where the company is the one that asks the question and you answer and they see if you are a fit or not. You have to ask questions back to understand whether the company is a fit for you as well, right? Because you don't want to make the wrong decision. This is a big decision that you're going to make. So that's what my advice on that will be.
Yeah, I just hop in here. Really, I would say the people who get, I don't know, let's just say high paying jobs, people who get maybe 6-figure jobs, they're often not the smartest. Sometimes, as Paras said, they're the most prepared, right? Which is great because that kind of evens the playing field, really. And prepared means more than just like having the good answers in the interview. It's about getting everything right before, during, and after the interview. So, like before the interview, right? Consider the preparation of the questions that you want to ask. Too. Consider logistics, right? If it's an in-person interview, how long is it going to take me for me to get there? Let me build in 15 minutes so I don't arrive late. It's appearance, right? You want to dress for success. Literally the night before of an interview, lay out what you're going to wear on your bed before. During the interview, other things like our arrival and introduction, come in with a good attitude, have a firm handshake, make good eye contact, make the conversation flow, have it like a conversation, like Paras was saying. You don't want it to just be one-sided. And then, you want to wrap up in the interview and ask for next steps. And then right after the interview, as we mentioned, you want to hit the follow-up. And then don't forget to take time to like self-reflect on like how well you did, maybe what you think you can do better for your next interview.
Once again, brilliant words from both of my co-panelists. So I'll try to say something slightly different because I agree with all that's been said thus far. I'll touch on just how one could prepare, because I do agree that, like, my experience, no interviews that I've sat through with candidates interviewing have stood out as amazing. The things I remember are the bad interviews, and those absolutely, I can distinctly remember them, were where people were not prepared and, took whatever circumstances for granted, that they were going to be able to fly through it without that. There's also just no excuse in 2025 not to come with like your ducks in a row in terms of prep, because everything's available online. If it's a public company, I recommend looking at companies' investor pages. Open up, download 10Ks. There's so much goodness in there, both like what the company's business strategy is, where they're spending money, where they have decreased or increased their spend, which tells you a ton. It lays out exactly what they think their challenges might be in the coming year. If it's not a public company, you can Google. You should look at their social media channels. Like, what is their, I mean, I'm a marketer, so I'm going to talk about like, what is their brand voice? How do they express themselves? But that's relevant, I think, probably for a lot of roles to be able to tell about the culture. Look at Google News, see why they've been in the media recently, understand what new products and solutions, if it's that type of company, they've released into the market recently. And if you've done enough prep, you're going to be able to integrate these talking points really naturally into the answers that you give. Even, give recommendations of how you might approach whatever it is, type of role that you're looking at. Like, oh, I saw you recently released this product. Like, how awesome would that be to do XYZ thing with? So that is my thought. Yeah, prepare +1.
Yeah, I love that. And I see we're also sharing lots of resources, guys, in the chat. So please make sure you kind of scroll. I see it's going, it's there's so many things. So make sure you scroll through it. But I just shared a document. I see Ford's pitching into that. So please make sure you look at the chat. There's a lot of great answers there as well. And another small thing I would like to add, I interview a lot of candidates. And what I often see is that we forget the small things as well throughout the preparation process, which is just, be camera ready, right? If it is virtual, don't twinkle your hair because you get nervous, because that actually happens. It might be silly, but it actually happens. Don't shift in your chair when you're doing that. I've seen more people do this because they get nervous. So these small things really make a difference. And I think Jane mentioned earlier, it's the way you present yourself, that even if you're on a Zoom, depending on the role you're applying for, you probably shouldn't be showing up in a hoodie, right? So, I mean, again, depends on the background of the, if you're interviewing for a startup, might be different things. But if you're looking at a corporate, please put on a collared shirt or something like that. So these small things, please also keep in mind. I want to kind of also talk a little bit more about, from a hiring manager's perspective, and Paras, I'll come to you first on this. So let's say a student, you got that job, right? You got the job, you did really good on an interview. What else, like, what are some things that are trainable and teachable in people? And what are some things that are not? Or is there anything that you cannot teach them? So you mentioned, curiosity, right? But what are some skills when you're evaluating candidates as a hiring manager? What do you look for? And you say, you know what, I can train that, but I cannot train that. You're muted.
Yeah, great question, right? I'll tell you this in form of a story. I started my career in technology at Bloomberg, where I was building data centers, replacing keyboards, and doing all of that. And I was tapped on my shoulder to run the analytics desk for Bloomberg in India. That was my path towards sales. And the person who came and asked me that question, that, hey, I want you to run this desk and start this desk from scratch. I looked that person dead in the face and said, if you're trying to fire me, tell me now. Please don't put me in a role that sets me up for failure. And that was the moment where I was schooled very quickly, saying that the role requires a certain amount of technical skills. All of those technical skills we can teach you. The role also requires a certain number of soft skills that we don't need to teach you, because we are confident that you have those, right? So I think that's something that you want to keep in mind. So as a hiring manager, right, I can't teach someone compassion and empathy. I cannot teach someone creativity and critical thinking, right? I cannot teach them how to communicate effectively. Well, maybe a little bit of that with right coaching and training, and as you go along and grow, all of that stuff happens, right? uh, I think those are those the old school soft skills are really the new school hard skills in today's day and age, right? Everything else can be taught. How do you write a piece of code? Can be taught. There are tools available that can teach you all of those things. How do I build a PowerPoint slide deck? If I don't know how to do that and I've been living under a rock, no problem, can teach that, right? So I think it all comes down to your attitude, your ability and willingness to learn, your flexibility towards that, and your positive attitude. Those are the things that nobody can teach you, right? So I think that's how I would categorize that.
Beautiful. Jesse, would you like to add anything to that?
Sure. I think like I get a little conflicted around soft skills being learnable or not. I feel like I've personally got feedback when I was earlier in my career about, for instance, like how I came off in meetings. I won't share it here, but it takes humility, and humility is also a soft skill that's really important. But I did reflect. And I can see like how, that piece of feedback there was validity to it. And so I guess one piece of advice is to ask people in your life who you feel comfortable for feedback about how you come across. I'm extremely high energy. And so like sometimes, for instance, I don't know how much energy I'm bringing to a conversation. And that's like one of the things I've learned to tone down based on who's in the room, who I'm meeting with, who am I presenting to, is it an executive? But that's the type of thing where I think like, had I not checked myself and also kind of heard some feedback throughout my career, I wouldn't have been aware of. Also another I think important skill, I don't know if this one's hard or soft, but is writing and communication just in general. I do think there is, a bit of like it's either probably a natural skill set or not, but I do think it's something you can work on. And I think it's really important, no matter what your job is, even if it's technical, being able to express yourself succinctly, concisely. This is another area where I've had growth. Like I'm very verbose. And so like I've had to learn how to tone down even like in my writing, especially if it's an executive communication. And there's so much you can read on this, to learn even before you're in that position.
Thank you for that. And if some of you are thinking, you're listening to this, you're like, that's great, but where do I even start? You know what I always say, like, start with the good old Google or ChatGPT. If you don't know where to start, like, literally have a conversation. There's, of course, LinkedIn Learning. There's a ton of courses available there. Depending on your kind of financial situation and so on, you can start there, or you can just go to Google. The information is available to you. It just really depends on you wanting to do the research and being curious, as Paras said. So I think that's really important. So it's really, really good stuff, guys. I want to shift a little bit towards kind of looking at the future of work. And Ford, I'll kind of come to you for that first. There's a lot of talk about AI, right? A lot of nervousness. Personally, I'm excited, but then my business partner told me that's because I'm on that, there's that, I forget the curve, but it's the curve where I'm the first adopter of anything new, of any new technology. So I realize a lot of people are not. Some people are excited about AI and the opportunities that are available, like myself, and some of them are like, I'll wait till it all goes through and maybe then I'll jump on the wagon. Ford, you talk to a lot of companies, obviously. You post a lot of these jobs, entry-level jobs in particular, and kind of early career jobs. Have you seen a shift in terms of what companies are asking for in terms of skill set as it comes to AI? Has it not changed? What do you see?
Totally. I would say, like, first and foremost, I have seen like a trend that companies are prioritizing skills more than maybe, I guess, like a prestigiousness of university that you attend or something like that. So that's helped like really even the playing field, which is great, right? Because even if you know, don't go to Harvard or something, right, you still might be able to get like a good job somewhere if you do have those skills, if you do have those certifications. Now with regards to AI, I mean, it's no doubt that AI will, like replace certain jobs, but at the end of the day, like humans still have to use AI. So like you do need to like start today on learning like the applications of AI and try to get certifications on different AI tools. If it is, like how to be how to optimize project management if you're into project management, or like how to like optimize sales if you're interested in tapping into a career in sales. So learning the skills on how AI can like increase the efficiency of that specific job, that will help set you apart. And what's great is right, everyone is kind of starting at the relatively same learning curve when it comes to learning this AI, right? So you as a 18-year-old, 19-year-old, you might have just as much of a learning curve as someone who is like 40 years old trying to learn AI.
Thank you for that. I have to pause and acknowledge something really, really cool. I have never been in a panel where the chat is so effective, meaning that you have questions and answered right there. I mean, you have education at work answering, you have Paras sharing documents. It's phenomenal. So keep asking your questions. I'm actually going to start coming to you guys to your questions in just a moment. I want to just ask Paras. Paras, you've dropped a couple of reports. Tell us a little bit about what it is. And because it looks like reports around kind of AI and future of work, talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah. LinkedIn has over 1 billion members, right? At any given point in time on the platform, the amount of activity that is happening on the platform is absolutely mind-boggling, right? Now think about the fact that we have 69 million companies on the LinkedIn platform, 41,000 skills that are on the platform, right? 136,000 schools that are on this platform. What's happening is every activity that happens, we look at that and we put out these reports, a couple of links that I shared in there, that gives us an insight in terms of how skills of the future are evolving in the workplace, right? The skills that were top 10 skills a year ago or 2 years ago are nowhere to be found in the top 10 skills that are evolving in the workplace in the last 12 months. So you see how skill transformation is happening very rapidly. So what Ford just mentioned in terms of, AI and skill-based hiring versus, skills over degrees, if you may, right, is a real thing. Like, what are the hard skills that you're bringing to the organizations? Organizations are not necessarily looking at, hey, you know what, I lost talent who went from my firm to this firm, so they are my competitor, and so on and so forth, right? Or, I hired X number of people from this particular firm. So, great, we are poaching talent from this organization. That used to happen 5, 7 years ago, right? Pre-COVID days. We are now in a situation saying that these are the skills that our organization needs in order to succeed. What are the people that we are bringing into our roster that have the right kind of skills to be able to solve these real world problems for us? And that is a true testament in terms of how hiring and recruiting today is happening, right? So I think it's extremely important. Always be learning, is what I would put out there, right? A half shelf life, I would say 15 years ago, right? So let's say from 2016 onwards, since we've been tracking, right? 25% of the skills required to do the jobs have changed between then and now. We expect that 70% of the skills required to do the jobs is going to change between now and 2030, right? So even if you're not changing your job is changing. And that's extremely important to remember, that you're constantly upgrading and upskilling yourself.
Thank you for that, Paras. I'll add to this. I'll steal one of the things Paras said, and I've said it before, but the curiosity is number one. So I'll look at it as 3 C's: curiosity, courage, and consistency. So curiosity, be curious about what's happening in your industry, not only in a job interview process, but also in general, like in your roles. How is your role going to be impacted? How is AI coming into play? Courage, to be willing to face the unknown, courageous enough to just realize that we don't know what we don't know, and be open enough to learn and apply that growth mindset, right? Like, it's just the ability to learn something new and be open to that. And the last one is consistency, which I think is just solid advice across board for whether you're trying to get in shape or eat healthy or have a solid career. Consistency, showing up consistently for yourself, for your career growth, and building those skills, and just consistently growing yourself as a person. I see there's a lot of questions. I'm almost done with my question part, and I've kind of incorporated some of those. So I just have a couple more questions for our panel. So this is a perfect time for you guys to start shooting down those questions as well. And then I'll come to Kamina as well. She'll kind of start looking at throwing some questions our way. But we've shared a lot of resources, guys. I wanted to ask all of the panelists kind of, what is one book that you would recommend when it comes to like careers and careers, growth, job search, AI, anything that you guys can recommend to the audience?
I can kick it off a little more of a non-traditional recommendation. It's actually like a fictional book, so not so much as like a self-help or like business kind of book, but the principles are very relatable to growth and like how to like take on life kind of by the horns. It's a book called The Alchemist. It's like a really short book, only 150 pages, but it's basically about like this young shepherd who goes on a journey to find a hidden treasure, but he discovers that like true wealth really lies in like following your dreams and listening to kind of like the omens of the universe. So he has like encounters with mentors, he has encounters with love, he has encounters with challenges, and he learns that like personal legends are really achieved through like persistence, faith, and self-discovery. So I think it's like a great guide. It's like a great book for like a guide for life because it teaches you like the importance of following your dreams, embrace the unknown and trust the journey, right? And it also reinforces kind of that true fulfillment really comes from like within rather than like external success.
But I was shaking his head. That's a double. That's a triple for me too. Yeah.
Plus
Anything
one,
else?
I've read that book 3 times. And I have read that book 3 times at different stages of my life and my career. And at each stage, it has given me a different lesson, right? So I won't pontificate further on that one. So The Alchemist plus one to that. But the other book I would recommend that more recently in the last 12 to 15 months that I have read that has genuinely changed my brain chemistry, and I could feel it, and people around me felt it as well, is Think Again by Adam Grant. What a book. And I think it challenges conventional wisdom and how do you approach problem solving differently. Great book. Love that book. I would highly, highly recommend Think Again by Adam Grant.
Okay. I agree with both of the above. Well, I've never read that book, but I listen to a lot of Adam Grant. I don't really like reading business books, so I'll put that out there. I do really enjoy audio. I will recommend Acquired, which is a really long format podcast. You have to have some time on your hands or like listen on double speed. But if you're interested in business specifically, they go through like, founder / business stories, and it's just really fascinating. I think the last one I listened to was Costco, and I don't have a Costco membership, but now I want to. I have read Chip and Dan Heath, they're brothers. I think the book of theirs that I read was Made to Stick. Like that's interesting to me. Like Adam Grant, or at least one of the brothers is an organizational psychologist or something like that. And for me, just like the psychology of people that then plays into business and how people consume and what works, what doesn't is really fascinating. Yeah, those are my quick hits.
Thank you, guys. And from a pure career development perspective, there's one that's called What Colors My Parachute? And it's literally like a guide that just goes like especially for those of you, there's a lot of people in the chat talking about career change. So definitely that's going to be super helpful. I'll put that in the chat as well. I do want to ask one question from the audience that I have seen over and over again in different formats. So thank you guys for the questions. First of all, amazing questions. We're already answering some of them as we went along. There were some of them that were very specific. So I recommend, you take a moment to connect to all the speakers, maybe reach out to them, ask that question directly, use the good old ChatGPT and Google to kind of look for some of those answers. Because I think some of them are just very, very specific. But there's one theme that I've seen across many questions, which is around, I've studied this, I've been doing this, I'm not sure how to do that career change. I'm not sure how to position myself for this opportunity. So there seems to be a lot of kind of career change questions that I felt came in. So, or I don't have experience in X. How do I position myself for that opportunity? So is there anything you guys can speak on where, not sure where to start, not sure how to position myself, new to the field, career change? That seems to be a lot of questions in the panel, in the chat. Whoever wants to take that on, and then I'll come to Kamina.
Jesse, if you want to go first, I can
Oh,
go
no,
after.
please, please.
Please do. Please.
Oh, okay. All right. We won't have a big fight here about who goes first. I'll be quick. So I would say I want to acknowledge that it is legitimately, I think, harder now to do with the job market because you have so many more applicants for every job that it's very easy as a hiring manager to find exactly what you want on paper. because you're getting so many resumes. So acknowledging. That said, if you are already in a job and wanting to pivot, I think the best thing to do is find stretch opportunities if time allows, or just like get yourself into other people's businesses and like other teams within, your current company where you can start to learn the skills and be exposed to the type of work that you want to do. Similarly, if your company has a culture of internal mobility, like Paras was describing, moving around Bloomberg, I did the same, like in a couple of parts of my career. At Meta, certainly I've been able to do that. Because people who already know you are more willing to take a chance on you than, like a cold resume to a new company.
Yeah, plus one. And I think it's important for you all to recognize, be kind to yourself, right? And understand and acknowledge, this is, and jumping the gun and going to one of the line items in there and coming back to it is, if somebody told me 20 years ago that your career is not going to be up and to the right always, right? I would have been much happier. I would have had more hair on my head and they would have been darker and not the gray hair that I have today, right? Your career is going to be a squiggly line, regardless of whoever says whatever they say. Do not compare yourself with somebody else's career path. No two career paths are identical. So I think when you're doing career switches or anything of that sort, when you're exploring an opportunity, it is not, oh, I'm going to be a manager, senior manager, director, senior director, VP. None of that stuff is going to play out. You're only setting yourself up for failure by creating that expectation in your brains. Your career is a squiggly line, and it should be a squiggly line because it's a much more of a representation of a fulfilled career where you can bring eternal stories and perspective to everything that you do in a very different way. So when it comes to career switches, be open, be flexible, because it won't be a straight line.
Yeah, really just to like double down on that. Career is totally not linear, but how do you figure out what it is that you do want? Like how do I know what I want to do? And that really, my suggestion there is try different kinds of jobs out, right? If you're in college, you're an undergrad, right? Go work for a startup, help them out with sales, see if you like that. Then go, try and work for a small company and help them with marketing and see if you like that. So trying to, just because you study maybe finance at university doesn't mean you have to go into banking. Like you can try to do different little internships, part-time internships in different areas of business to kind of see what you like. And I know a lot of big companies too have like leadership development programs where they have rotational programs where every 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, you kind of rotate to a different division of business. So those are good companies to look out for if you're not totally sure, right, what area of business maybe you want to start your career in.
Thank you all. I want to pass it over to Kamina. Kamina, you got some questions from the audience for us.
Yes, I do. But before I even get started, my knowledge has increased tremendously since 1:30, not only from the speakers, but from the chat room. So, I don't know if it's possible. And so many of you here, Stephanie, Melanie, can we unmute everyone and have them applaud themselves? They showed up. And to me, that's 90% of success. Ford, you're the lower end, closer to their age. I think you agree with me. Showing up is almost everything, right? So let's applaud you and applaud yourself. Now, before I go to the questions, I want to remind you that this does not end here. Thanks to Paras, LinkedIn is both free and paid for, so make sure you don't only connect with the speakers, but connect with each other and keep talking. This is how you find mentors, about jobs, etc., etc. Rodrigo Polanco has been patiently waiting since 1:52 p.m. Rodrigo, I want to hear your voice and see your face. Can you please unmute yourself, show your face, and ask your question? Are you here? Rodrigo Polanco? I guess he's not here. So
no,
we can.
He's right there. He's right there.
Oh, good. Go ahead, Rodrigo.
I think he's
I think
still.
Oh, there we go.
There you go. Yep.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, I guess, what kind of advice do you guys have for, I guess, somebody making a transition into a different field? Well, in my personal, I guess, sense is like I'm trying to do a career change. So if you guys have any advice to get into that. I'm working on my master's right now. And then, yeah, just what advice you guys have with somebody with minimal or little bit of actual work experience? Thank you.
Um, I will say one thing. I don't know if I have a ton of value add here, but I just finished my master's last year. I was a little late, if you can't tell. But I do know that most universities have career centers. And so like whilst you're in school, I would say take advantage of any free career coaching that you might have through your institution. That's huge. And then, going back to the concept of networking, the network that you're building through school to not, minimize the value of those connections as they start to enter the workforce themselves, presumably in the same field or similar to the one that you might be looking to go into.
Rodrigo, where do you go to school?
Stevens?
Oh, good. Love Stevens. They show up at every
Mhm.
event. And I must say, one of the reasons that Steven shows up to every event is that they have a career department that really cares. So please tap into your career department as well. They're busy. I recently heard the numbers. It's 1,700 students to one career advisor. So you have to be a little bit patient, but try to reach out to them. I mean, hopefully, eventually you'll connect, but you can also connect with them in person. You can also connect with them on LinkedIn. We have a second question from someone who's also been waiting for a very long time. It's Ali, A-L-L-I. Ali, are you still here? Okay, so while we are waiting for Ali, would someone like to raise their hand and ask a question? Don't make me call on you. Matteo Nardelli, I know you're here.
Looks like Malady has a question.
Okay, good. Oh, Melody, before we get started, let me tell you with Melody. Paras, are you ready for this? I met Melody on Tuesday, and she is brand new to LinkedIn. She has a 3.7, and she's gunning for a 4.0, and she's an artist, and she attends University of Mount St. Vincent. Go for it, Melody.
I think people might just need some help unmuting. That's what's going on.
Yeah, that was it. Hello, nice to meet you. My name is Milady. It's okay for the pronunciation.
We can't hear you very good. Come a little bit closer, so I think that we can hear you, but it's far away, at least for me. There you go, speaker. Yep.
Hello?
Can we?
No?
Yeah, now you're good. Yep.
Yeah, thank you. Hello, my name is Milady, and I am studying psychology at University of Mount St. Vincent. Thank you for having me here. Similar to the guy's last question, a lot of my resume involves work in offices and schools and clerical work, but that was not something I was interested in. I was just simply interested in gaining skills like communication skills, technology skills, and administrative skills to help me in my future careers. However, my resume doesn't exactly align with what I want to do in the future. I was asking you guys, do you think that I should keep that, or should I just start from scratch and delete it all?
Keep it. Be authentic. Rewrite
Okay.
it, right? I think it's important for you to put it out there, right? I worked in a cafeteria when I was at Michigan State University. When I got my first job, I had that in there, right? It speaks about teamwork. It speaks about hard work, right? Ultimately, it comes down to how do you phrase the sentences of what's the work that you have done in those roles that show that you possess the skill sets for the kind of a role that you wish to do and that you want to do. So what you want to do is you want to spend a few minutes to rethink your bullet points and rewrite them relevant to the job that you're trying to apply for. So if you're trying to apply
Mm,
for a sales position, right? Guess what? You can rewrite those bullet points that essentially exhibit the kind of skill sets that a salesperson will need that you gained when you were working in that role. ultimately it's all about selling yourself and your experience to the role that it is that is designed for it. So please don't
I
delete it,
understand.
right? Keep it, be authentic.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Alka Bushan, you're next. I see your hand is raised. Can someone unmute him, please? It seems like I'm unable to unmute him.
Hi, everyone. So I'm majoring in marketing analytics from Lubin School of Business, Pace University. So just like major people from here who have been applying to jobs, so a very interesting point was mentioned by Ford that you should, take follow-ups from HR. HR really likes follow-ups. So just like major people, we are applying through LinkedIn and Handshake, where we don't get any point of contact of HR or any people from recruiting team. So how do we follow up?
Yeah, that's a great question. I tried to sort of steer the conversation in the chat a little bit, but probably got lost because all of y'all were so active and being such great attendees here. I ultimately the follow-up comes from after the interview. Obviously, it's hard to follow up when you're in the just sending your application in. Now, there are things you can do to make your application stand out, and that is what Paras just touched on, which was tailoring your resume to the job role based on the skills and past projects or past jobs that you've already had. But also what you can do, right, is let's say you do see a job posting on Handshake and it's from company XYZ. You can go on LinkedIn, you can look up company XYZ, you can go to the people section, and you can see all the people that work for that company. Then, if you applied for a marketing job for that company, right, you can reach out to the specific people that work in the marketing department and say, hey, great to meet you. I just sent my application in for this role. Just wanted to let you know here are the top 2 reasons why I think I'm a great fit, and I look forward to hearing back from y'all on the application process. Now that's one thing you can do to help yourself stand out. But at the end of the day, ultimately, the key thing on the follow-up that comes like post interview.
Can I just
yeah,
add
yeah.
one quick thing in there? Because I saw a couple of people had also wanted to know if LinkedIn Premium was worth it. So of course, Paras could answer this, but I'm not biased. One note is that if you have Premium, you are able to do more of that in terms of messaging. And of course, correct me if I'm wrong there. But I don't think you can like freely just message anyone with a regular membership.
You're right.
And one,
It does
yeah.
do that. It also, the more powerful features of a premium is that it gives you 2 things. One, it gives you additional insights about the company that you're applying for, that it unlocks for you, right? And 2, what it also is going to do or is already live, from what I know, is when you're looking at a job, it analyzes your own profile and it tells you how much of a match to that job you are, so that you don't waste your time unnecessarily applying for a job. So that's another feature of the premium that tells you as a seeker, am I fit for this job or am I just going to set myself up for failure, right? So you can regulate that and decide whether you should apply for that job or not. So I think those are the more powerful features. The outreach is something that's your kryptonite that you want to make sure that you use very thoughtfully.
And one thing I'll just add is that you don't always necessarily need to reach out to the hiring managers. Sometimes you won't find them. Sometimes they're not on LinkedIn. But what you can do is just look at the alumni who might be working in those companies that you already have connection with through your universities. And you can ask them simple questions like, hey, Elena, I see you working at company X. I see we studied in the same college. I'm just about to graduate. I applied for this job. Can you give me some tips about how do they do recruitment? You don't need to ask them for recommendation unless you really know that you don't need a referral, but just asking them information that can help you in your job search. How do they source talent? Some companies use recruitment agencies. Some companies you apply online. Some companies use LinkedIn and Indeed. So getting any information that's helpful for you to get your resume seen. So think broadly. Don't just think hiring manager and recruiter because they get inundated with emails, but who else do you know that can be helpful and give you information you need to make your applications get to where they need to go?
Great. Can someone please unmute Mateo while he shows us his face?
I'm here. Okay.
Good, perfect.
You hear me, Camina?
Yes, perfectly.
All right. So my name is Mateo. I'm about to graduate here in New York City with a degree in IT and management. So I have an interview tomorrow. So thanks, Camina, for the perfect timing. And as Par says, the way you end your internship, your interview, it's really fundamental. No? You have to show that you're curious, and I really want to finish with a strong questions. I don't want to ask the usual question like, oh, what does it take to be the perfect candidate? It's really general. I want something like more deep in order to stand out and say, oh, this guy is really curious. So is there like a scheme that you use to formulate these deep questions? Any advices on that? And before finishing, also, I want to tell everybody that thanks to Camina, I had an offer for a job. So keep attending these these events, and I'll update you on that, Camina. Thank you so
I'll put
much.
my Zelle in the chat.
Thank you. Thank you.
I would like to suggest that actually thinking about the things you do want to know. Because sometimes if you come with, it's always good to have like some scripted stuff, but presumably you have real questions, like what would the culture be like there? Who are the people you might be working with? These are things you should want to know because it will determine your level of happiness if you get the job and are in it. So I would, just kind of suggest like rereading the job spec. Maybe there's information that's missing that you would be curious about.
Yeah, and I think if I add to that, right, I think something along the lines of, being able to think on your feet around what you discovered during that interview and being able to frame a question regarding something that is genuinely curiosity generating in that question, in that moment, right? Something along the lines of, also, what is the most exciting thing that you and your team is working on right now? What is keeping you up at night, right? Not generically what is keeping you up at night, but it's like, what is the hardest thing you're trying to solve as a team, right? And that shows the curiosity of the fact that I not only want to know more about your organization and your company and your team, but I want to genuinely know what are the hardest things that you're working for. And then adding that with a comment saying that, all right, that's exciting, that's interesting. And if they share something that this is the hardest thing that we are working on and that you realize in that process that it's unsexy, you don't want to work there, right? So you want to genuinely understand all of those things. So yeah. Good luck with your interview tomorrow.
Bonus points if you look at try and find a press release that the company just recently did, and then you kind of already know maybe what things that they're excited about and working on, and then you can ask them you can refer to that press release, right? You read it, you understand kind of what, and you're excited about it, but you wanted to hear from them a little bit more on things that like what's keeping them up at night, stuff like that. So that could stand out, shows that you're proactive, but also you're interested in the future of the company as well. So you're worthy of being invested in.
Beautiful. And just to kind of add a little bit more to that as well, is remember you're asking a question. It's also an opportunity for you to then sell yourself even further in case you hear something and you like, maybe you forgot to mention a point, or they say, you ask a question, what's the exciting thing they're working on? And they say something that's like, you forgot to mention that you're really good at, that could be helpful. That's an opportunity to piggyback off of what they're saying and to continue to kind of add to your profile as a candidate there as well. Sadly, the time goes by really fast when we're having a great time. We have great speakers and amazing questions, but we are at time. And so first of all, thank you so much for your engagements. Please take a moment to connect with everybody, to connect with each other. I already saw some LinkedIn profiles being dropped. Also, Education at Work is going to drop a quick survey in the chat. Please, this is important so that we can continue to host these events and do better and better each time we do it. So please give your feedback. The survey link is going to be dropped in the chat in just a moment. Take a moment, and for us as a thank you, we would really, really appreciate that. Thank you to the panelists. I mean, we walked away with a lot of knowledge. I've learned, I'm sure the audience have learned as well. It's just been a phenomenal amount of information. So please use it all, take notes, write things down before you walk away and forget about it. It's been beautiful. Thank you, Jesse, Paras, Ford, for invaluable invite and insights, and Camina, of course, for choosing some of the best questions out there in the chat as well. At this time, I would like to pass it over back to Jane Swith, President of Education at Work, for closing.
So first of all, I know Kamina and Elena thanked us for offering this. I want to thank Kamina and Elena for helping. First of all, when I saw what Kamina did, it's so relevant to my daughters who are all in their 20s doing their first jobs. And I was excited to try this as a new outlet for us. You have blown away my expectations. One of the things I put in an answer to one of the questions is, I think a student asked, or one of the folks on here asked, should I take experience off of my LinkedIn? There's a misperception by many hiring managers that young adults on college campuses are spending all of their time marching around, doing this and that. And we see exactly the opposite at Education at Work. We have so many smart, talented, ambitious students, and you all just validated that. But making sure that you show the work you've done, I think even if it's not related to what you're applying for, you are combating a narrative of your generation around work that is wrong, but it exists. And again, just like how you should dress and show up, you don't have to like what exists in order to be aware of it and then understand how you address that in your interviews. For those of you who didn't see the link in the chat, please do the survey. We are doing our big strategy meeting at Education at Work today. And one of the things we're trying to figure out is how much of these kinds of opportunities we should dedicate our bandwidth to. And so you're answering that question will help your peers who didn't have a chance to come today to come to something like this. We're also considering whether or not to do them regionally at some of our talent hubs, but mostly the thing that was the most uplifting for me, because Pra said piss poor, so I might be able to use a little swear word here and get away with it. I always tell folks, not everybody can have a bitchy, bossy mother like me. Education at Work exists because frankly, my mom, who was a kindergarten teacher, and back in the day when she got pregnant, they made you stop and go home and not work, even if you were married and pregnant. And so she didn't have this kind of advice to give to me as a sort of first gen person who was looking to go into a career that she had no experience with. And so that's really what these type of opportunities, as well as internships and paid work, are designed to do, is to give you access to people who can answer these questions. But most importantly, for those who are feeling discouraged, A, you're not alone, but B, persistence, persistence, persistence. And frankly, telling somebody, I've been trying to work for your company for, 6 months and I've sent this many things. People love persistence. They love follow-up. They love being prepared. Just by showing up today, I am confident that all of you will achieve your professional goals and get that good first job. Keep showing up. When I was first elected at 25 to the state Senate, I was often described as tenacious. And for the young women on this call, sometimes when somebody tells you you're ambitious or tenacious, it can feel uncomfortable, right? Because that's not always seen as how we should present ourselves. Be tenacious, be ambitious, own your strengths. We're not going to change the world and perceptions of us unless we bring, and I think it was either Ford or Prost, bring your authentic self with all the polishing, your best, most professional, authentic self, and you will all be successful. I love the encouragement. I love the chat. I'm so glad that I answered Kamina's outreach to me on LinkedIn. I get a lot of them. And as many of you may know, she's a dynamo. So this was fantastic.
Thank you so much. Paras, how full is my jar? How full is my LinkedIn jar? Thank you, Jane. I really appreciate that. It means a lot, As you know, this work takes a lot of energy, a lot of time, and it's not very respected. So it meant a lot to me. I mean, from day one, Jane, she lives, she breathes she does it because she wants to do it. And that's the only reason you're in this space. Jessie Paras, I've met Jessie in person. This is her second event. I know Elena well. Paras, it's really great to meet you. Ford, you got some big work to do because, you know, you got that new platform and I'm seeing you March 14th. So Jane, I'm going to plug my next event. It's in person on March 14th. Make sure you come. We have all the AI experts. We have OpenAI, we have PwC. Make sure you're there. Do yourself a favor. It's in New York City, by the way. And that's it. I'm done.
Beautiful. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks,
Bye.
all.
all. Thanks.
Bye, all.